All right, let's dive right into this explainer, where we're going to explore the absolutely fascinating and honestly seemingly contradictory ecosystem of Vienna's housing and real estate market. Now, when you think of a major European capital, you probably imagine sky-high rent, super exclusive neighborhoods, and a cutthroat property market, right? And well, while Vienna definitely has its share of extreme wealth and high-stakes real estate, it simultaneously operates one of the most robust, tenant-friendly public housing systems on the planet. So today, we're going to unpack exactly how these two radically different worlds somehow manage to coexist and actually even collaborate right in the heart of Austria. We're kicking things off by zooming in on a truly staggering number: 125 billion euros. According to Family Office research data, that is the combined estimated wealth of Vienna's top 25 richest individuals and families. I mean, it's a massive figure, and it really highlights Vienna's status not just as a beautiful cultural hub, but as a major center for ultra-high net worth individuals. We're talking about a mix of traditional industrial dynasties that have been around for generations, alongside modern entrepreneurs who built their empires a bit more recently. Because the city acts as a strategic bridge between East and West, that geographic advantage has helped generate profound private wealth, much of which is managed through highly discreet private foundations and family offices. But here's the really wild part about this money. Notice how incredibly top-heavy that wealth distribution is. Over 58% of this massive pool of private capital is concentrated in just the top two spots. At number one, you've got the Porsche Piech automotive dynasty, sitting at 36.5 billion euros. And right on their heels, fueled by the Red Bull empire, is Mark Mateschitz with roughly 35.8 billion. But I really want you to look at number three, George Stumpf, sitting at 8.6 billion euros. His wealth comes directly from real estate and investments, including massive, iconic projects like the Millennium Tower in Vienna. So right off the bat, this tells us that real estate is an absolutely paramount pillar of wealth generation in the city. Now, obviously, it isn't just wealthy local families buying up the city. Beyond individual billionaires, Vienna is an absolute magnet for institutional capital. The data shows there are over 150 major institutional real estate investors actively pouring money into Austrian property. We're talking about heavy hitters: investment managers, private equity firms, REITs, and pension funds. They're all scouring the city for prime assets in a stable, highly desirable European capital. To give you a sense of who is actually operating at this level, we're looking at massive corporate giants. Take CAMO, for example. They focus heavily on developing and managing high-end central office buildings. They use what's called an active capital rotation strategy, basically selling off non-core assets to fund new, super lucrative projects. Then you've got Erste Immobilien KAG, the investment arm of Erste Bank, and they're targeting sustainable residential and office properties. And of course, Bank Austria Real Invest, who are just incredibly hungry for prime core real estate across Vienna, everything from high street retail to residential infrastructure. The bottom line, they are all mandated to generate solid yields and lock down trophy properties. So here is the billion-dollar question. With such an extreme concentration of private wealth and literally dozens of corporate real estate giants sweeping through the market, who do you actually think owns most of the everyday housing in Vienna? I mean, if this were London, Paris, or Munich, the answer would almost certainly be private landlords or corporate entities. But Vienna, well, Vienna has a very different story to tell. And here is the massive plot twist of this explainer. Despite the billionaires, despite all that heavy institutional investment, a mere 30% of apartments in Vienna are privately owned. In a lot of global cities, that number easily clears 50%. But here, half of the entire population, 50%, lives in subsidized or municipal housing. It's a completely mind-blowing statistic that just shatters our traditional understanding of how a major city functions. The private wealth is highly concentrated at the top, while the housing for the masses is deliberately kept completely out of the speculative market. Section 2. Europe's biggest municipal landlord. Inside the Wiener Wohnen ecosystem. To really understand Vienna, you have to pivot away from the private wealth for a second and look at the city's own property management service, Wiener Wohnen. The city itself is Europe's largest municipal landlord. The sheer scale of it is just incredible. They manage 220,000 apartments, housing roughly 500,000 people. To put that into perspective, that is literally 1/4 of the city's entire population living under a single municipal landlord. And why do they do this? The main goal is to effectively calm rising market prices. By maintaining this massive public housing stock, the city relieves the pressure on the private sector. In fact, because the population keeps growing, Wiener Wohnen has actually started building new social housing again. They want to ensure they aren't pushing people into the private market, because that would just drive prices up for absolutely everyone. When you look at these two worlds side by side, it's like looking at two completely different planets. On one side, you have the private institutional mandate. Those 150-plus investors we talked about earlier, they are hyper-focused on capital rotation, yield generation, and acquiring core assets. On the flip side, you've got the Wiener-Wohnen mandate, operating on a totally different logic. Their focus is solely on housing affordability, expanding the public stock, and shielding tenants from those exact market pressures. It is literally a dual market system operating in the exact same geographic space. Now, you can't just hand keys to 500,000 people and hope for the best, right? Housing people isn't just about the physical buildings, it's about managing communities. To handle this vast, super diverse tenant base, the city uses a concept called besiedlingsmanagement. Because social housing brings together people from vastly different backgrounds and age groups, tensions are naturally going to rise. So the city enlists organizations like Wohnpartner, which employs over 150 people. Their entire job is to mediate conflicts, organize community gardens, host neighborhood block parties, and empower the residents. They build trust so that tenants learn how to navigate the natural friction of living in tight, densely populated spaces. It's a really smart, proactive social investment that keeps the whole housing ecosystem healthy. Section 3. Private Capital, Public Good, where Vienna's two faces intersect. Now, you'd probably assume these two worlds, the ultra-wealthy investors and the massive municipal social housing machine, are completely at odds, right? But listen to this quote. Housing is a basic need, and the monthly cost should remain at an affordable level. You totally expect to hear that from a city official. Actually, scratch that. This was said by Hartwig Loger, the CEO of the Vienna Insurance Group, or VIG. This perfectly captures how some of the largest private institutional investors view their role in the city's housing ecosystem. They actually recognize that sustainable, affordable living spaces are essential for a stable society, and a stable society creates a stable environment for their investments. It's a win-win. And they're actually putting their money where their mouth is. This isn't just PR talk. Through targeted institutional investments, private entities like VIG are actively contributing to the public good. Take the Vienna Nordbahn district, for instance. VIG companies helped create 1,850 rental apartments there. And amazingly, 75% of those are designated as affordable housing with unlimited rental contracts. And beyond new builds, they're deeply involved in climate-fit renovations. They're systematically making their older real estate portfolios EU taxonomy compliant. They're even stepping up for historic preservation, taking on the renovation of architectural gems like the famous Otto Wagner house on Vienna's Schottenring and making them green, energy efficient, and sustainable for the future. So where does this go from here? Well, to keep housing affordable, the actual way we build has to change. Traditional construction is incredibly resource-heavy, it's slow, and it's getting more expensive by the minute. And all those costs inevitably get passed down to the tenants. But here again, private capital is funding the solution. Institutional investors are pouring serious money into prop tech companies like Gropius. The Gropius model is a real game changer. It completely digitizes and automates the prefabrication of sustainable multifamily homes. It conserves resources, slashes costs, and proves once again that institutional investment and social good can absolutely team up to solve modern housing challenges. So as we wrap up this explainer, here's a thought I want to leave you to chew on. We have just explored a city that harbors 125 billion euros of elite private wealth and attracts hundreds of aggressive institutional investors, yet somehow manages to house 50% of its population in highly organized, affordable social housing. It's wild. Can other major cities around the globe replicate this? Can we balance extreme private wealth with a tenant-focused, affordable living ecosystem anywhere else? Or is this just a uniquely Viennese phenomenon? It is definitely a fascinating question for the future of urban living. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning how our cities are built.